right, everyone. Welcome to the STOA. This is a session on embodiment, and I'm really digging this embodiment thing. As some of you may know, my favorite Stoic quote is from Epictetus: "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And I discovered this quote from Nietzsche this morning too. There's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy, which I quite like. And here at the Stoa, I want us to lean into this praxis of embodiment, as I see embodiment sort of as an ecumenical practice that can be fused and probably should be fused with all of our other practices. And our girl, Benita Roy, she had her latest Substacks missive, she dropped this term I quite like, bodyfulness, in contrast to mindfulness. And I sense this bodyfulness thing could be like the next thing. And today's session is based off a quote from the Buddha, and I'll read it. Within the fathoming body is found all of the teachings, is found suffering, the cause of suffering, and the end of suffering. Oof. So the title of today's talk is The Fathoming Body, Embodiment, and Inherent Intelligence. And our presenter slash facilitator today is Etche Anderson. Etche is an embodiment practitioner. She's a coach in embodiment, and she was a part of the high pitch, or she is a part of the high pitch conversations that started here at the Stoa and is continuing elsewhere. And I'll share the links in the chat in a moment. And how today is going to work, we're here for 90 minutes in total. I'll tag in Etche in a moment. And for 60 minutes, Etche is going to share her screen and have a presentation, and it's going to be infused with embodiment exercises, so it's going to be quite cool. And then the last 30 minutes we'll have a Q&A. So if you have questions anytime, just drop them in the chat. Call on you, ask your questions to Etche. If you don't want to be on YouTube, just indicate that and I will read your question on your behalf. So that being said, Etche, welcome back to the Stoa.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm Etche Anderson. We're just meeting for the most of us, apart for a few. It's such a pleasure to be here. I will be sharing my screen in a second, but before I do so, I just want to introduce myself a little. I feel extremely blessed to be here, to be able to do this, because it's the story of the transformation I'm still in the process of, but I have accomplished a level of well-being from spending probably 20 years of my life in chronic depression. So from that to becoming a person who feels a genuine interest in life, a genuine desire to participate more fully, a genuine, I'm admitting someone, yeah, a feeling that I can do it versus a chronic feeling that I can't, that I am not cut out for this journey here, being a little too thin-skinned, if you will. And in that process, I have moved from having a finance background to, a life as a yoga practitioner, studying psychology, and systems thinking, complex systems, and consciousness shift. How does true transformation happen? Which inevitably brought me to trying to understand the subconscious. And from that journey, I have ended up in what our topic is today, which is embodiment. Because I finally understood that unless I'm able to feel all of that I aspire to in the body, and metabolize what I need to metabolize so that I can bring myself more fully into this moment, from moment to moment. Goodness, I lost my chain of thought there. So one thing I can disclose in my transformation that I'm still practicing is that I actually get performance anxiety. So this presentation is kind of the remaking in real time of my new self, and you're all participating in it. So I'm very appreciative of that too. So in moments when I lose my chain of thought, I will just maybe take a minute and recenter, and we will have this to pull from as well as an example, as an ongoing example in the presentation I'm about to start. So in the meantime, I wonder if you could drop down in the chat box, like what brought you all here? Like what is your challenge? Or what is your passion that has you interested in this topic of embodiment or the inherent intelligence or the relationship to each other? Yeah, with that said, I think we can go to my screen. Let's get this going. All right. No, this works. All right. Okay, friends. We're going to start with an embodiment practice so we can drop in. And this, the goal of this practice is to track your body. Track your energy in the body, and to know where you are when you're in the body and when you're not really there. So we'll just practice with it and see how it feels for you. It will take about 5 to 7 minutes, so get comfortable. And you may close your eyes, you may lay down, you may just gaze down. It's all your choice. And dropping into your bones, dropping into your seat. Maybe you wiggle until you find a comfortable seat. And starting with putting your attention on your feet and allowing yourself to fully embody, to fully fill the space in your feet. Okay? And while you're trying to do that, take account of where your energy is right now. Where do you have the most sensation, pulsation, tingling? Most of us live in the front of our bodies most of the time, and even up and out of our bodies. And we're not even conscious of it, but it's very possible that you can start sensing into your signature way of being. We all have our habitual ways of being. Sensing into your feet, and through the means of your attention, pulling your awareness upwards towards your pelvis, and allowing yourself to fully occupy the space in your pelvis. Maybe the more superficial sensations of skin touching clothing is available to you. Maybe you jiggle very slightly to get a sense of the muscles in your pelvis. That's a feedback that you can use to go deeper into your felt sense experience in the pelvis. And the quality in the pelvis that you can sense into is Judith Blackstone names it as gender. I will add your sense of safety. You have access to feeling into your sense of safety, your sense of self in the pelvis. And out of that sense of self, a sense of solidity is available to you as you're able to feel into being in your pelvis. And slowly you can raise your awareness to your chest area and see what's available to you in your chest. The quality in the chest is love. Love and flow. Your breath moving in and out. Maybe you can feel your lungs moving in your chest cavity. Maybe you can feel your blood pumping, your heart beating. Maybe you can have even more subtle sensations of the vibrations that are available in the chest. The vibrations of the neurological wiring we have in there. Beautiful. And bringing your awareness upwards all the way to your head, allowing yourself to occupy the space in your head. You know, for me to be able to do this, I need to start relaxing around my temples. The quality in the head is the intellect. Okay, so all these qualities, as you drop into the body, are available to you just because you're alive. Okay, and that is what we are talking about when I'm referring to inherent intelligence. That there is a quality of intelligence already available to you, wired in your cells, just because you're alive, just because you made it. You made it to Earth, you made it this far, you're watching this. And now we'll do a little experiment as you open your eyes and fixate on something that's around you, be it the wall or the bookshelf, a book. Notice the texture on it. Notice the color. Give it a name. Call it its name. And see, where did your felt sense of energy go? What are you able to feel right now? Where is your energy? Where did it move as you started paying attention to something that's outside of your body? And now find a way to internalize your attention back. So maybe the chest was available to you to feel the most, maybe your hands, maybe the back of your body is available to you through the practice we just did. Maybe your feet. You may lower your gaze to look at your lower right knee, to come back into the soma, into the body. Okay. So what you're playing with here is being able to pull attention and energy back into your body at the felt sense level. And you're really training your muscle as you're gonna open your eyes in a second, or if your eyes are open again, as you start paying attention out there, what happens to your energy? What do you feel? Can you feel some of the body while you're paying attention to something that's out there? Okay. So as we come back into the Zoom room, I will ask Peter to split us into groups of 2 for about 2.5 minutes each. Maybe you can discuss how this practice went for you, or you can discuss what embodiment means to you. Why is it important to you? What got you to join this call? Okay, so we can bring all of our voices into the space, into the field, the collective intelligence that we are, and then we will take it from there. Okay. So again, what brought you here, or did you experience anything significant during the practice? What does embodiment mean to you? As Peter is splitting us into the rooms, and maybe you can keep me out, Peter, and with you, so we can work on the slides.
All right. So it's 5 minutes in total. Is that?
Yeah, let's give it 6 minutes total, 3 minutes each, so people can drop in for a second. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad that all our voices are in the field now, and hopefully you had a meaningful exchange. We are going to dive in with this, with these verses from Vijnana Bhairava, which is a tantric text that has 112 ways to realize the true nature of reality and how we enter into universal consciousness. And in there, in the 112, there are about 5, 6 that mention the direct work with the body. And this is one of them, okay? And maybe before I jump into this one, I do wanna, because I couldn't at the beginning when I lost my notes, I do wanna talk about the title, Fathoming the Body, not the fathoming body, fathoming the body, which refers to measuring to the depths of our inner being. And embodiment, I use it in a sense as our capacity to feel into and have access to our full being, okay, our full soma, which some embodiment practitioners talk about the soma as one with the spirit, as I will be suggesting in my presentation here too. And by inherent intelligence, I'm referring to what some of us call God, the source. Star Wars calls it the life force, right? That life force, that is the animating principle that got us here, that takes us through, and that animates everything that is also around us. It is a shared field with all universe that we also get to soak in and have access to through embodiment. That is my suggestion through this presentation, that through the means of our body, the connection of the subtle body, the concrete body into subtle body, we have access to the causal, the cause of it all, that allows the subtle and the concrete to be here. And we will tap back into all of this again. So these verses are beautiful. I will read them and comment at the same time a little. It says, experience the substance of the body as the world as made up, experience the substance of the body and the world as made up of vibrating particles. So this I perceive as subtle body. And these particles made up of even finer energies. This I perceive as causal body. And of course, maybe it's not, but this is my interpretation. Drifting more deeply, feel into each pulse of energy as it condenses from infinity and dissolves back into it continuously. So these verses are referring to this continuous movement as the makeup of the universe, right? A continuous movement that is are dissolving and that are coming back into very complex forms that we see around us, including ourselves with our bodies, right? So noticing all that, noticing this, noticing the subtle and the causal and the movement, Breathe easily with infinity dancing everywhere, which is beautiful that it brings the breath in, because really it is through the means of the breath a lot of the time that in the most difficult times we have access to coming back to our senses, coming back to life. I mean, the breath is the one that attaches us to life in the concrete as we know it. So these verses, they talk about our interconnectedness in a way, but they also talk about this animating principle as a movement. And if I read into it a little, I will call harmony as another principle that we can draw from these verses, because the formation of this level of complexity actually requires homeostasis, right? A level of harmony that we continuously find within ourselves, whether we pay attention to it or not, right? The oxygen level in the atmosphere, we don't pay attention to it, yet it is held at a certain balance that allows life on Earth to be what it is. Your autonomic nervous system is keeping your heart beating, all your organs running in such a harmony that most mornings, well, until now, all mornings, we were able to wake up and stay on Earth, be here, right? So all of that also suggests an instinct of health, as Annie Brooke talks about it. She's a somatic therapist, psychotherapist. Some modalities like network chiropractic or craniosacral therapy, and some modalities in psychology also recognize this orientation of ours towards health, that regardless of all the abuse, all the toxicity, all the hardship that we might incur throughout our lives, it takes a lot to throw us into sickness, into imbalance. And even when we are thrown into it, we have, by means of movement in the right direction, slight movement in the right direction, we can allow a momentum for this instinct for health, instinct for harmony to come into being. Okay, so this is the quote that Peter was referring to. Within this fathom-long body is found all the teachings, says Buddha, all the teachings, the suffering, the cause of suffering, and the end of suffering. Okay, and I find it significant that we are provided, if you have the ears for it, the eyes for it, that we are provided with a shortcut, if you will, that is the body. We can read into our body, we can start noticing where the constrictions are, where we have access to in the body versus where we cannot feel, we have numbness or severe, pain, etc. We can start to unwind and gain more access to more of our bodies. And this presentation suggests that we will have more access to overall intelligence through our bodies, and through that kind of presence, we have access to the intelligence that is around us that we can perceive. So pertaining to the end of suffering, a yoga teacher that I deeply study with, T.S. Little, he says, the more you cultivate a felt sense of the sweet, subtle core of the body, the closer you get to the source. Again, pointing us in that direction that through the means of our body, we can practice a level of subtle awareness. And the more we participate in that the more we gain that capacity, the more we will feel into what, you know, many of us call the source, what I call the inherent intelligence here. Okay. So then we will look at suffering, cause of suffering, and end of suffering. Suffering, as many of us are familiar with, we suffer in many ways. Very early in our childhood, we gain certain defense systems, the fight, flight, freeze, collapse, which are mostly, you know, all kind of suggested in this poem by Rumi. But he also tells us the way out, again, through the means of our perception organs. I'll just read into it, okay? It says, stay with us. Don't sink to the bottom like a fish going to sleep, right? The freeze, playing dead. Be with the ocean instead. Be with the ocean moving steadily all night, not scattered like a rainstorm, which could be dissociation, fragmentation, right? The flight, the many ways of flight that we undertake. Not scattered like a rainstorm. The spring we're looking for is somewhere in this murkiness. So the spring we're looking for is in this murkiness that our bodies are, that our actual real lives are, okay? To the degree that we are willing to come into the body and feel all the discomfort that we might not have felt until now because we have numbed it out, okay? Because it's not the easiest practice, this path of embodiment. Hence, so many of us just dismiss it, okay? But to the degree that we do that, it says, you can see the night lights up there traveling together, suggesting that even in the dark night of the sky, in the darkness that we might be lost in, we will find some lights, some orienting principle we will find within ourselves. The candle awake in its gold dish. So the candle that you are is awake in its gold dish that your body is, okay? So the spring we're looking for is somewhere in this murkiness. See the night lights up there traveling together, the candle awake in its gold dish. Don't slide into the cracks of the gourd like spilled mercury. Collapse, right? When the full moon comes out, look around. So if we allow the collapse, the freeze, all the automatic responses that we are so familiar with, that we fall under when we're in stress, we miss a lot of full moons that are happening around us. We miss a lot of the harmony, a lot of the beauty, a lot of the intelligence that is actually here, if only we can dare to come back and be here and pay attention in this different way. So we were going to do a little practice, but I think we're kind of running out of time. But this one was suggesting that it was going to give you an experience of recalling a hard memory that recently happened. Maybe you got angry, irritated, sad, something that you didn't like. And as you recall that, and you can do this exercise once we hang up, as you recall that, you can close your eyes, get into the feeling, name the feelings that are coming up, and find them in your body. Allow yourself to drop in to really feeling the feeling of the memory, and then open your eyes and start looking around from left to right. Name the things your eyes are seeing, okay? Like if there's one thing that I am very excited for you to hear from this presentation, is that through the means of your perception, you can gain these tools of using your sense organs in such a way to get you out of dysregulation and bring you back into regulation. This is very possible by this time, after 20, 30 years of somatic psychology. There's a lot of wisdom and practices we can start tapping into. I used to fall into the group, and I suspect many people still do that. Like those simple things are gonna help me? And the answer is yes, they are simple and they're very, very helpful. So going on with our presentation, the cause of suffering, apart from Buddha's explanation of it being ignorance, ignorance of our interconnected nature, ignorance of the true nature of reality, true nature of ourselves. The psychological, biological reasons for our suffering come down to these three questions at birth. As an infant, we are very much preoccupied with these three questions. Is the world safe? Will I survive? Will I survive in relationship? Okay. These questions seem to be the underlying questions of the nervous system and govern child and adult relational behavior under stress. So not only are we preoccupied with these questions, they actually, when we're infants, they really define what gets imprinted on us, what first conclusions we draw about life, and we decide about life, and then we start holding our bodies a certain way because of those beliefs, very, very early belief systems, okay? But Annie Brooke is suggesting that those very same belief systems or responses also come online when we are under stress, right? And the ways of being that we have learned since conception are imprinted into our bodies at a cellular level and reflect in how we hold ourselves, how we sit, how we walk, how we talk, all of it. They have informed the way our bodies, muscles, and bones have shaped. So if you were a person who has been emotionally abused, like attacked by one of your parents a lot, like not so nice words, you probably have a contracted solar plexus area. This is very, very common. And then to protect your heart, you probably drew your heart backwards and your shoulders might be rolled forward a little, okay? All of these things you can start noticing about yourself as you start paying attention in this way, okay? So within the tissues of our body, we hold our patterns of being, both the limiting ones, as I am highlighting here, but also the constructive ones. And that is respect to Bonnie Thoreau, on how much she emphasizes that, we don't need to be solely trauma focused here. If trauma is imprinted in our bodies, so is well-being. In fact, at a more baseline level, at the very, very beginning, life wants to create more of itself. So we can rely on a level of resilience just out of being alive that is available to us, that is also imprinted into ourselves. And as you start to occupy the spaces in your, say, pelvis, yes, you can feel into the contraction that might be there, say from, early childhood sexual abuse. But you will also start feeling into the space that holds all of that has in it the inherent animating principle that is for life, that allows for life to create more of itself, to find health, and healing when it has come out of balance for one reason or another. So well-being is prior to whatever happened to us. Okay. And then there's this beautiful quote from Judith Blackstone. She says, "The memory of the trauma and our reaction to it are held within the tissues of the body. Our childhood mentality and emotions are bound within the constrictions in our body and will continue to influence our present-day outlook, abilities, and choices." So this is very similar to what Annie was saying about how we react under stress. And in some way, not just under stress, whatever we chronically carry, it affects the way we think about life. Whatever we have as our baseline of thinking, like the world is not a place to be trusted, okay? Then all the reasons why you should not be trusting the world will be highlighted to your perception, right? So our childhood mentality and emotions continue to influence our present day outlook, abilities, and choices, right? For example, if I were to remain with my childhood mentality of that I freeze when I give presentations. Yes, it is true that I have frozen in the past. Yet I am, through looking at that belief and so many times that I have frozen, and bringing to the same level my desire to share this information, share this knowledge, speak with more and more people, I am able to start creating a new reality for myself, right? If I'm only willing to take the risk, stay with the discomfort of it, and just it's not like pushing through, because just to be able to do this, I have prepared for years in what we can now I understand it to be a training in positive sensory input that I will be talking about in a second. So we start nourishing and nurturing ourselves and rewiring ourselves when we're not under pressure first. So we get ready for the moment of stress that we want to experience differently. Once we have wired for the new experience enough, where I have, yes, all these fears are coming up right now, but can I call on the sense of safety, the sense of well-being that is also available in my body, that I have spent so many hours in? So bringing that to the same level, and then making a conscious choice of like, okay, I can feel the fear, I can hear all the things it says, and I'm not going to take it to heart. I'm not going to be grasped by it. I'm going to look to what I actually want to experience. I'm going to give it a chance, okay? So staying with the enjoyment of your experience versus the terror of it. And rewiring yourself to the degree where you can make that choice, right? This is what this presentation is about in so many ways. Yeah, I'm going really fast because I feel like we have to make some time for Q&A. We have arrived to the end of suffering. Good news. Okay, and this end of suffering is, again, from the perspective of the body. And this is a poem by T.S. Little, with whom, as I said, I study. And he says, "This settling is like no other. Settling into your bones, into your seat, maybe while you're listening to this poem and recalling the practice we did. This settling is like no other. Letting the bones drop like fallen tree limbs, now inseparable from the dark, rich humus of the forest floor. Let your flesh and sinews be the food for 1,000 creeping lives. Let your eyes be the light for the tendril growth of the new shoots. Let your blood be the rivers that guide the salmon in migration, and your breath the blanket of peace to cover the wounds of the world. Let your breath be the blanket of peace to cover the wounds of the world. So this is a beautiful, beautiful poem that speaks about the interconnectedness that we have with the natural world, yes, but it also talks about how my inner well-being, my sense of peace, my subtle qualities of well-being actually can make a difference in the world that's out there that we get to witness, that is in a lot of suffering right now as we're going through these transition times, right? There's much to be healed on planet Earth right now, starting with ourselves. And when I think about it that way, I actually allow myself the kind of time that I get on the mat, which I haven't. For years, I was a very hyper cognitive person. I come from the integral background at the beginning of these last 10 years. I've kind of hung out with some of the rock stars in the change-making community. And like many of us, I'm a very cognitive person, and I just could not allow myself, also because it was not the most comfortable thing, I think. But also cognitively, I was thinking, all of that doesn't matter. That's not what's going to make the difference. I have to understand more, study more, and solve the problems up here, versus dropping in and actually finding a place within myself of well-being. I will tell you this little thing as well, that I decided to finally go the distance when I had a child 6 years ago, because I had no choice. I did not want to drop back into depression, because I knew by that time that it's not what I say, it's not what I do, it is what I truly feel and how I truly am that imprints on that child. And I was very committed to not passing on depression, collapse, retrieving from the world, staying small. I didn't want to pass those things to my son. I wanted to break the intergenerational samsara, if you will, and allow him to have a different kind of future by embodying a different kind of way of being, right? One that is settled in well-being. So we are at the 55-minute mark, and I have 4 more slides, and I will go through these a little fast. This is the more mental area, but for those of us so oriented, more cognitively oriented, the 3-body theory, Sharira Traya, is a doctrine in Hindu philosophy, especially in yoga, Advaita Vedanta, and Tantra, the non-dual schools, that the reality we are part of is made of 3 planes of existence. It is the plane of the gross, the gross body. It is the plane of emotions and thoughts, where it's the subtle plane where the emotions and thoughts exist. And then the causal, where the spirit if you will, resides. And this triple body theory is a universal theory that also exists in, say, the Catholic Church with the God, the Holy Spirit, and the Son. Also in Tibetan Buddhism, Dharmakaya, Sambodhakaya, Nirmanakaya. And what I'm suggesting, or this is not my suggestion, this is what I've learned through experience and through my studies, but what I'm trying to broadcast more clearly, that we can have access to the causal intelligence, the life force, okay? The blissful experience of the fundamental consciousness, as Judith Blackstone calls it, the fundamental consciousness. We can have access to it through the means of dropping into our physical bodies and increasing our subtle awareness capacities, okay? Hence the name of this presentation, Embodiment and its relationship to inherent intelligence. As for the fabric and energetics of embodiment, again, there are two ideas on the slide. I will name the first one first as the capacities of somatic intelligence or somatic maturity, if you will, that it requires a capacity to track, trace what's happening in your body. Where's your energy? Very much like what we did at the beginning of this call. And then somatic metabolizing, which really refers to the fact that the implicit memories from our early childhood have their chemical reactions in the body, okay? So if in the moment I feel threatened in a similar way, this is all happening subconsciously, so you're not aware. And I find myself reacting a certain way, okay? It is possible that I track the emotions, I name, I can see where it is, I can feel where it is, I can name what it is, and I can tolerate those chemicals of the heart racing, the anger, whatever the emotion might be, okay? I can hold it, and if I have practiced enough, I can switch lanes, okay? And that is the somatic repatterning. So you allow yourself through the holding, through the metabolizing of your hard moment, you're allowing yourself to repattern, rewire a new experience, a new pathway. And the more you do this, the more that path becomes your automatic go-to, instead of the unconscious one that you have basically inherited when you were a child, okay? And the means for this full integration process is, well, Judith Blackstone talks about it this way, or at least this is how I interpret what she says, is that our capacity to hold our awareness, to track, trace in the body, so be aware of the physical sensations, and then be aware of the emotions and thoughts that are going with those physical sensations, all at the same time. Because sometimes we can do the awareness, sometimes we can be overtaken by the emotions, sometimes we can be a lot more in the gross body, we can be overtaken by the physical sensations. So to the degree that you can start doing all three of these at the same time, you will gain mastery in a way, right? The yogic path of mastery, I would say, is really one's capacity to do all this. So there are some inner and outer attitudes for repatterning that I have named that I will just go over very quickly. It begins with your decision and commitment. So all of this, that's the second or third thing that I want you to really hear in this presentation, that you can do all of this. This is all available to you, and it begins with your decision, and out of that decision, your commitment to continue with it. Every day you wake up, and every day you try again. And you know, some days or many days over many years, it might feel like you're back in square one. Okay, but you stay with your decision to live a different life, be a different kind of person, have a different kind of signature in the world, and you stay committed to it. You come back to the practices, and the practice, across the board, all the somatic modalities that I have come across, what they're really doing is they're creating a way for you to have a positive sensory experience. Okay, in more subtle ways, you could be calling your resources, like, you know, gods, goddesses, your guides, your grandmother, whoever is a source of protection for you. Recalling that is a subtle way of positive sensory input. Or you can get on the mat and start doing some satya practice. Satya is what T.S. Little teaches. It stands for Somatic Awareness Training for Yoga Attunement. And on the mat, you can roll and you can start feeling into your myofascial layers. You can start feeling into your joints, and the joy of stretching, just being on the back of your body for at least half an hour to an hour and a half, maybe, and see how you feel after that. Okay, so regular positive sensory input, and then you start looking at your daily life. That's how you know you're in right practice for you, that your daily life starts reflecting back at you that you are doing better. Like, you start having an easier time getting out of bed. You start having an easier time putting breakfast down for the children, or cleaning the kitchen for the 5th time that day. Or there are more people who want to hang out with you, or you start laughing more when you're with friends. All of these are feedback, real life feedbacks that you can start paying attention to. And to hold all of that, as you gain insight into who you are, what your contractions are, what your stress points are, you can start designing your life more consciously to enable these ways of being, to enable, you know, every couple of hours, a pose on your yoga mat. You take 5 minutes to drop in any which way possible that's available to you. Okay. One way I do that is I have yoga mats throughout the house, actually. So that would be enabling life design that I'm talking about. Yeah, and finally, I want to really name this before I finish, that this is not a straight path. It took many, many years to wire you into your limiting patterns of being, however age you might be. And it takes time to rewire. It doesn't mean it can't happen fast, but generally, it requires patience and a lot of tenderness and a lot of love towards yourself. And at the beginning of this path, you know, you can feel like you're full of constrictions. You're very aware of how you dissociate, how you're in dis-ease, etc. But then, you know, you practice the positive sensory input through whatever modality you are undertaking when not under stress. So I cannot underline that enough. So you do all of the dipping into the goodness, into feeling good, feeling the flow of your body when you're not under stress. And then you come to a stage where you can see your patterns acting out, but you can't really act differently yet. So what you do is you go back and you do more practice of positive sensory input. Yeah, and then at some point, as I was saying, what happens is your contraction, it's not like we are dissolving the contraction, completely, it's still possibly there. It just is not the only thing that's there anymore. You have developed in yourself a sense of well-being in a very tangible way because you've been practicing the somatic tracking, the somatic metabolizing, and the somatic repatterning. So in a very, very tangible way, this wellness is available to you now. So, and over time, as you have life experiences, the pathway that you have started carving out for yourself takes over and it becomes the dominant one. With that, I will resume. There are some tools that I have listed here, the names of the teachings, the teachers I work with, for you to come and have a look. And maybe we will have more sessions to go more deeply into the details because I was only able to touch upon the things for now. With that, I will end the presentation. I will open it up for Q&A.
All right, I will unshare your screen. Well done, Eche, on a lovely presentation. Everyone give a little Eche a round of applause.
Thank you.
So we'll pivot to Q&A for about 20 minutes. We got some good questions. I think Stephen's question would be good to start out with, even though you touched on it a bit, perhaps personalize it. Stephen, if you could ask your question.
Okay. It seems like maybe you have answered this question at least partially, but I'll ask it anyway. Since your own journey with embodiment has been difficult at times, what made you stay with it and trust it?
Thank you. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. For me, the last streak was my son, the birth of my son, you know? But even without that, for those who do not have children, the alternative was unthinkable for me. You know, I've had such hard times where life was just not interesting at all anymore. And but I was never seriously suicidal. I could never see myself going through that path. So I'm like, I'm not gonna stay in this misery. We're gonna do something about this. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Here's a somewhat related question. Ben wants me to read it on his behalf. Do you have any advice for people who do not like to be in touch with their internal sensory experience and find this unpleasurable or aversive?
Yes. Like as I feel into the question, like what the sensation I get is not pleasant either. Yet to have access to my intelligence, I have to remain with it. So I think what you're bringing up is, what was the name of the person?
Ben.
Ben. Thank you, Ben, for bringing it up. Is the reason why this is such a, well, it's becoming popular now. Maybe it's because cosmically it's time, but many of us on Earth prefer not to dwell in our bodies because it's just not very pleasant feeling into the contractions that we have so carefully wrapped and suppressed when we were young so that we could go on with life. My other answer that I would like to add to it is that it will all become available in its due time. Like you showing up for this call means you have an interest in this topic, and in this journey, because I'm not just talking, I'm talking about a very actual and doable journey by all. And having tenderness, having permission to go very slow, right? Finding a practitioner who understands all that and who can hold your hand through and through. And maybe that's not just one person. Maybe you can create a whole team that you work with on different things. Yeah, when it's unbearable, then we don't go there. We only go to the degree that we have resourced and created enough security and enough enjoyment, and then we dip into the discomfort, okay? And then we come back to the sense of safety, sense of enjoyment, the pleasantness. So this is called titration. We titrate back and forth, and somatic experiencing practitioners are very well trained to do that. Pendulation is another word, sure. I hope this answers. Yeah.
Cool, Ben. Any follow-up you want? Cool. Benita, if I can tag you in, if you had any questions or thoughts to share.
I can try to tag. This is a very important question that Ben asked, and Akshay and I hash these things out all the time. There are two different perspectives, and I think one of the reasons a question like this comes up is because there's not enough distinctions to be made. I mean, you have to make distinctions. If you go into your sensations of your body, there's really nothing to be afraid of. I mean, we're talking about your heart rate, your muscle contractions, what your facial muscles feel like, what your eyes are doing, what your stomach, maybe you have a stomach ache. These are sensations of the body. And so the distinction here is that there's some kind of psychic trigger that that's painful, right? It's like an internal story. It's an internal story that's wrapped around you so tightly that that's really what suffering is, right? So this is an important distinction to make. When you go inside, and there's something very frightening there. It's a knot of psychic and stories that have been told. And so the first thing you have to do is be able to make that distinction, because you learn to trust that the body, you can be with the body sensations and slowly unravel the thoughts and the knots and the stories, what we typically call trauma. And so I think that's a very important distinction to be made in the work. It's not the topic of this thing, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, if you had some people have such bad cancer in their spine, they don't want to go into their body sensation, right? That's a truly horrible body sensation. But we have to make a distinction. When I go inside, it's just too painful. This is not your body. it is ultimately your body, but you have to understand the components of the pain, which is a big part of the process. I mean, Dan Brown does a lot of this. He shows how it's not necessary to revisit the trauma. You can work from the body out, but you have to make a lot of distinctions. And unfortunately, a lot of embodiment workers, body workers, confuse psychic structures with body sensations. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, I will add to that the psychic structure does bring up a certain chemical soup in the body that then could be considered the body. And the unpleasantness, I think, comes from the unbearableness of those of those feelings, right? But yeah, I really love that distinction. Thank you, Bonnie.
Can I give an example that's not so intense, but my dogs are going crazy? So I was working with someone, a 6-day workshop. And at a certain point, he was going underneath painful stuff. And then he's like, you know, I'm just really sad. There's a lot of sadness. And so we sat there in the barn and we were just really sad. And the pain was because all his life, he's been told that being sad, there's a reason why you're sad. Because you didn't this and you didn't that and you didn't, that's where all the pain was. But when we were just really sad, the trees became beautiful. This pattern of sadness feels slow and heavy and it's embodied. But the pain was because he thought, I mean, this is basically how Westerners deal with this state in the body, that there's a reason why you're sad and you need to do something about it. It was a total misconception of what sadness is in the body. It's a valuable rhythm of the body. And this is how we constantly get the body wrong in Western culture. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Benita. Drew, you had a question or a thought to share?
Hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, and I don't know if this phrase exists, I just made it up, but over embodiment, in that sometimes when I was in college, I'd get overwhelmed and I'd go for a run. And so I think at some point the run would give me relief or release from whatever, you know, the demon was. But then other times I would run until my feet bled. And I feel like that's probably not best, but knowing that it wasn't best didn't make it stop.
Wow, very interesting. Yeah, in fact, when I say we can tap into the somatic perception organs, including movement, right? Our capacity to locomote and move out of a state of being that feels stuck, overwhelmed, etc. That is definitely what I'm referring to when I say, oh my God, that's what I found. I was so surprised. Wow, it actually works. If you go for a run when you're under stress or overwhelmed, if you go for a walk, it actually will allow me to come back, self-regulate, find a new perspective and move on in my life, okay? But then you can use any activity to go towards dissociation, right? So when you're running to the degree where you're hurting, I mean, if you were in touch with your body in that moment, you would probably stop it before your feet start bleeding, right? So there has to be a level of disembodiment for you to be able to run until that point of that level of pain. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's an end to our creativity in all the many ways we can use, including all of these teachings. That's why Bonnie is very careful and generally allergic to all the teachings. Because what happens is we hear with the mind we have and we interpret the teaching that's supposed to be helpful, we find a way to just use it the way we are actually already wired, you know, in the purpose of our dissociation, etc. Yeah. So yeah, you want to look at the level of harmony in your life. Your feet disintegrating is not a level of heightened harmony. Yeah.
Cool. Any follow-up question, Drew?
Thank you. I mean, I think maybe often in those moments, what would happen for me was I would run for a while and then I'd feel temporarily better, but when I'd stop running, I'd still feel like shit. And I'd be like, okay, I guess I need to run more. When maybe what I needed was to cry,
Yeah.
and crying is not allowed. So yeah, the bit you mentioned about you can use any activity for dissociation was really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that in. That's so essential, and it's, I think, a direct example of what Bonnie was talking about, right?
So I have a question, and if Benita wants to jump in for this as well. I really liked Benita's distinction of mindfulness and bodyfulness. There's like this whole disembodied industrial complex out there, and but like to hone in on that distinction between mindfulness and bodyfulness, I was talking to the applied mindfulness people here in Toronto, and they were telling me how the Chinese government actually approached them and they wanted to learn their techniques to sort of like weaponize mindfulness, and I imagine for some kind of like control governance machinations. And so if this idea that mindfulness can be co-opted, could bodyfulness be co-opted for kind of nefarious means, or is it one of those things that cannot be co-opted? So I'm just curious what you think, Etche, and perhaps Benita.
I will totally let Bonnie take this one.
Sure, I think that's how that's the first co-optation, right? So like you put students, we control people's bodies at school. We put them in lines. This is tells kids a lot. Any kind of addiction, bodyfulness, hacking is, just any kind of advertisement, getting people like another tantric type of coordinated activity, right? Any kind of tantric dancing or ecstatic dancing. This is all can be co-opted and has been, by armies and mass consciousness for a long time. So yeah, all this stuff can be co-opted. I think it's harder to, I think the mindfulness thing is they have to work in connection, because you can use the mind to make sure your body's not hacked, and you can use your body to make sure your mind's not hacked. It's like what Etche was saying. It's about bringing these parts of the human experience into resonance so they're on the same team. And in mindfulness, you get the sense that the mind sits on top of the body and watches it and stuff. And in bodyfulness, in the Qigong community, sometimes they're very, very against having any kind of intellectual pursuits at all. The idea is that they're on the same team. That's really what you want them to be. So they're all participating as a team, and one is not somehow the authoritarian, I would say.
Thanks, Benita. And perhaps we can end with Evan. Evan, if you had any thoughts or questions to share.
Yeah, well, first of all, I love what Bonnie just said. That's like my go-to strategy, is something that's like intractable to deal with at the level of the mind, go to the body, intractable to deal with at the level of the body, go to the mind. So just want a big +1, that idea. But what I actually wanted to bring up here is to get your take, actually on body work specifically, because I think that, when when the people asked a question before was talking about, well, what if it's unpleasant to go to deep into the sensations of the body or something along those lines, my sort of go-to in those situations is, well, get body work, right? And even if you're not like having the financial means to get, like professional body work, I found at least that it's amazing just what, getting a friend to give you a little massage or like try and do a little bit of awareness raising stuff can be. So I wanted to get your take on whether you think that body work's a sort of integral part of the path of embodiment.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that gets you into your body as a I work with the rolling balls on the ground for myself. When I do yoga, you can do yoga and still very much stay brainiac, okay, versus develop a discipline to starting to feel what muscles are moving when you do X, Y, Z, right? So when you are starting to sense into your muscles, you're developing your proprioception, your interoception. When you're taking a massage from a friend or from a body worker, again, you're getting actual feedback. It's an easier way to get proprioception and give your hindbrain, your back brain, the neural feedback that all is safe. You know, when the proprioceptive nerve endings receive information and carry it back, we actually get a tiny bit dose of well-being, the feedback into our well-being. So yes, anything. So in embodiment practice, in my coaching practice with people who cannot feel, for example, I have them hold a towel and start squeezing it. Or for me, when I'm giving a presentation, I could have remembered, and I didn't, to rub my fingers together, to feedback and allow myself to stay with ease. So that feedback is very important when for people who have no access at all, getting them to a wall and starting them to push into the wall, you know, push and feel their hands and follow that through into their arms. You can all do all these practices. We can all do, and we should periodically, every day, like get into the body. Yeah, massage is the best way. Thank you for asking that.
Any follow-up, Evan?
I guess just a follow-up comment just sprang to my mind because, again, Benita had mentioned the Qigong people, and although, you know, there can be issues with, oh, no, don't ever have any intellectual hobbies or whatever, one thing I love that the Qigong people are all about is doing self-organ massage. So I think that, like, the abdominal area and the organs specifically are somewhere that we have very little awareness of. So I just thought I'd throw that out there as a great thing for people to try. You know, there's books on it from Mantak Chia and others, but it's definitely worth checking out as an embodiment adjunct, you know, to your regular like yoga and more sort of active processes with that self-organ massage. Just wanted to plug that, and that's it.
Cool. Thank you, Evan. So actually, we're reaching the bottom of the hour. Is there any kind of thing that you'd like to leave us with? Any closing thoughts, perhaps where we can find your work?
Yeah. This body of work, we will put it on YouTube, so it will be available as a presentation. The way to reach me can be through newhumanawakening.com. And closing thoughts. Yeah, my intention for this presentation that we all leave semi in touch with our degree of dissociation, because we all are in this modern age, especially as crowds who are more cognitively brilliant people, you know, and that we can all, through very concrete means, we can all do this kind of work and find greater ease in our lives, greater ease, greater peace within ourselves, so that we can come into the right perspective when the moment calls for it. Because the more of us available in the moment, the more we can actually see and be in touch with whatever is going on around us as it is, without coloring it with our own unexamined thought patterns and constrictions that live in the body. So the body is the means to start unfolding all of that. What are your lenses? And can you stay in a clearer relationship with whatever's around you, to be able to bring the new and whatever is our next possibility. That would be my closing thoughts. Thank you for being here and allowing me to do this. This was a great opportunity for me.
Very cool. So I'll make some closing thoughts in a moment, but yeah, Etche and I were talking beforehand. She was concerned that she might freeze up or something like that, but it didn't happen. The new era of Etche is upon us. Would love to have you come back to Stoa to do more series, Etche. And a similar session's coming up. Skylar Brown is coming in July 21st, called a session called Coming Home, A Path to Embodiment. And she's part of the, I think it's okay. I think you call yourself the High Pitch Witches or something like that. I think I heard that somewhere.
Sure, so we love that. Yeah.
So another one of the witches is coming in. You can RSVP there, A Path to Embodiment. That should be an exciting session. And I just posted this event too on Stoicism. I'm totally trying to seduce the Stoic community to become more embodied. And we're going to have Stoicism, the tactical athlete through suffering at peak performance. How can we be embodied through all that? So that should be a cool session. You can check that out on thestoa.ca. So that being said, Etche, everyone, thank you so much for coming to the Stoa today.